Despite all the criticism, perhaps Terry Fontenot is actually cooking up a contender here in Atlanta.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now, if you do not know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. the Jolly Green Giant, a.k.a. the iron that sharpens the iron, a.k.a. Mr. Knowles, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 20 years, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on this illustrious podcast for well over a decade. And I appreciate each and every one of you that goes strong with me, whether you've been here for over a decade or you've only been here for the last 10 seconds. Appreciate you, everydayers. That means you make this podcast your first listen each and every day. And all you got to do to become an everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So we do not have Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta today. He decided he wanted to go golfing or something, but serendipity allowed us to get a pretty good fill-in for him today. We have Tyler Dunne of GoLongTD.com to talk about his recent piece that he wrote on Terry Fontenot, essentially what he's been cooking up here in Atlanta. He's been cooking up that souffle. Will that souffle rise up or will it fall flat? We'll get into that with Tyler. This is part one of a two-part conversation with Tyler Dunne. So without further ado, let's jump into that conversation right now. Welcome back, everyone. We are back with an illustrious guest here on Locked On Falcons. He is none other than Tyler Dunne. You can find his work over at Substack on GoLongTD.com. He just dropped a feature on Falcons general manager Terry Fontenot, the second one I believe you've done, Tyler, called Rebels, How Terry Fontenot, the NFL's most fearless GM, is driving the Atlanta Falcons into title contention. What a title. It's music to the ears of Falcon fans everywhere. But Tyler, my friend, how are you doing today?
Aaron, what a pleasure to be here with you, man. I know we've kind of been ships passing in the night. I do a Falcons story just about every year, this time of year, and we get all excited about this team, but it feels real. It feels real. So I reached out to you and said, hey, we got to sit down and talk about Terry Fontenot, Michael Penix Jr., James Pierce, the whole bunch. But no, man, you have a great show. It's an honor to be a part of it.
Appreciate that. And I appreciate you, wanting to be on the podcast. According to some people, like that's not a great place to be if you want to be on this podcast, but I think it's a great place. But no, I think the core of sort of one of the things you wrote about in this feature about Terry Fontenot is essentially the Falcons march to the beat of their own drum, and that's one of the things we talked a lot about on this podcast, where we kind of label it as, the belief that you're the smartest guy in the room and sort of forging your own path, bucking conventional wisdom, whatever you want to call it. And I think you outlined some of those unconventional, unorthodox methods that the Falcons have used over the last, 4+ years with Terry Fontenot on the job as general manager, including paying, non-premium players premium salaries, like Chris Lindstrom and Jesse Bates at guard and safety, foregoing positional value with top 10 selections by taking a tight end and running back that high in a draft, the selection of Michael Penix last year after you guaranteed $100 million across 2 years to Kirk Cousins, trading up this year for James Pierce. But your article breaks down why Terry Fontenot believes that all of these moves are going to pay off. So after you're chatted with Terry, are you buying what he's selling?
I am. And I think that, look, I try to put myself in the position of these GMs where, like, say you're Terry Fontenot, you've been grinding as a scout for 18 years with the Saints organization, and Joe Shane with the Giants, he's living out of a Marriott his whole life. A lot of these guys spend so much time away from their kids, their wives, their families for this opportunity. And I was sitting with Terry Fontenot in his office, just so Aaron, like, put yourself in that office. Your listeners, put yourself in that office. If you were the GM of a team, I feel like we would want to go the direction of a Terry Fontenot in terms of you do all of the work on these prospects, you fall in love with a player or a veteran in free agency, you should do everything in your power to get that player and not give a flying what anybody thinks or what any positional value chart tells you, any trade chart during the draft tells you. Like I just think it's admirable because with where NFL coverage is today, we're all part of it. We think about this league 24/7, 365. We dissect it unlike any era before us. And I think through all of that, we've all kind of been conditioned to think about the game in a certain way. Like, oh, you have to draft this position over that position. Oh, you can't take Michael Penix Jr. because he doesn't move like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May. And he's off the ACLs and like those receivers, they probably made him. I just think that the abundance of coverage kind of gets us thinking about players and positions and the game. It lends itself to groupthink, where the more natural position is the one that Terry Fontenot takes. Like, no, we're going to do our work. We're going to trust what we do in this building. We're going to have conviction on players, and we're going to go get that player. And it's not always going to work out, right? Like, you drafted Kyle Pitts ahead of Micah Parsons and who else? Jamar Chase,
Yeah.
Penei Sewell. Go right down the list. That is a bust of a pick with who you took him over. And he still might be really good for them in this offense. You paid Kirk Cousins $100 million, guaranteed. I get it. There's going to be whiffs. And I'm getting ahead of myself probably, Aaron, so I apologize. But, like, if you've got the trust of ownership, if he's willing to spend, and he's willing to spend, then money is no object. Hell, do what Terry Fontenot's doing. Keep saying hit me at that table because it's going to add up. You're going to have more hits than misses, and you're going to be in a position where they were in 2024 to draft that quarterback because you've got the team and the offense around that quarterback to excel.
Yes. And so, talking about forging their own path and sort of this bright future and vision ahead, a lot of it kind of boils down to, did the Falcons finally find their franchise quarterback? And Tyler, I want to talk about this vision of this team and sort of how it could go right for this team in the year, not only this year in 2025, but in years to come. And we'll get into all of that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So Game 6 of the NBA Finals is tonight on Thursday. Will the Thunder close it out, or will the Pacers push it 7? And with FanDuel, you don't have to worry about missing any of the highlight-worthy performances or can't-miss moments. Will we get a gutsy performance from Tyrese Halliburton coming off an injury? If he scores more than 25 points, you'll get 12-1 odds, meaning if you put $5 on that and it wins, you'll get $60. There are so many ways to win with FanDuel, and they're going to give you every opportunity, whether it's betting on, who's going to win this game straight up, or building a parlay where you can decide exactly how many points, rebounds, threes made various players can have, or even just who's going to score the first bucket in the game. So head on over to FanDuel.com to take advantage. And if you're new, it's a perfect time to sign up, because when you place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. That's $200 that you can bet on the ongoing baseball season. Will the Braves bounce back, or the upcoming football season, since we know Terry is cooking up something fierce? So again, that's all over at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Tyler, as I said, as you kind of outlined just now, and also in this piece, you can kind of see the vision for the Falcons and how they've laid it out, right? It kind of meandered a little bit, I guess maybe you could say, to get here. But, if this Penix selection turns out to be the right one, this is really kind of that big piece that could fall into place for this football team. You land a franchise quarterback potentially. You have several skilled players entering their primes that are potentially going to get top of the market deals over the next couple of years. I'm looking at you, Drake London and Bijan Robinson. You're hoping that the selections of James Pierce and Jalen Walker now to sort of be these foundational pass rush pieces that you can build your defense around for many, many years to come. There's this vision of this thing is going to come together for this Falcon team, not only this year, but in the future. I'm curious, do you see that vision? It's very clear that the NFL seems to see that vision, at least the schedule makers, because they gave the Falcons 5 primetime games this upcoming season. So everybody's going to either see this thing come together or, potentially collapse this upcoming season. Much to my own personal chagrin, because anytime the Falcons are on national TV, I'm just like, just don't embarrass me like you guys often tend to do. But what are you sort of, when you look at this vision, I think you sort of outlined it, but do you see this vision coming together for this football team, not only in the short term, but long term?
I do. I think that it seems like the order of operations for Terry Fontenot is all jumbled. Like he's drafting this player before that player, and how can you do this when you don't have the quarterback? And it's really been all over the place. But I think if you're going to operate off of that conviction that he speaks of frequently, loving a player, not liking a player, trusting all of your scouts, all your coaches, your analytics, your player performance, all these people, then the timing is actually dead on. Because you think about when he took over the Falcons in 2021, 5 quarterbacks were taken in the first 15 picks, but he really didn't like anybody that was there. You're right. Like if you draft Mac Jones or Justin Fields there, you can make the argument like his regime is dead upon arrival. And maybe it's hard to kind of move on from one of those quarterbacks because that's who you've really hitched your wagon to with a roster that was not ready for a rookie quarterback. So they took Pitts, but it could have been a hell of a lot worse if you take a quarterback there. 2022, it's the Kenny Pickett draft, right? Like not a good draft for quarterbacks unless you're a Nostradamus and you know that Brock Purdy is going to be the Super Bowl quarterback. So, okay, you don't take a quarterback then. 2023, you're not really in range. That's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson at the top, and they weren't going to force the issue. So, like, you get maybe the best running back in football, Bijan Robinson. You get Drake London, who's more than just a playmaking wide receiver. He wants to, reach into your chest and grab your heart and throw it on the ground and stomp all over it. They love this dude. He's what they want everybody to be in that Atlanta Falcons locker room. So, okay, you get a receiver, you get a running back, you build up the offensive line. Chris Lindstrom had the opportunity to chat with him at length last season. The way his mind works is freakish. I mean, he is as smart, as detailed of an offensive guard as you're going to get in the game. He's worth every penny of that contract. You sign Jesse Bates, you extend AJ Terrell. Okay, now you get to 2024, and you paid Kirk Cousins all that money, and that's where we were all in the wrong. We're just assuming, okay, they got their quarterback. Now you got to get a pass rusher. Now you got to try to win with this guy. But back to that ownership point, if you've got an Arthur Blank who's going to tell you, look, I'm tired of watching Desmond Ridder try to throw the football, and Marcus Mariota, and us trying to like piece together this powerhouse team around a D+ quarterback, to put it kindly. Like, get a quarterback, then you're going to pay Cousins, and you're going to be open to the possibility of falling in love with a quarterback. And they fell in love with Michael Penix for several reasons. So they take Michael Penix. And I think that, to answer your question, yes, it feels like the vision is finally coming to fruition because you finally had that adrenaline rush if you're Terry Fontenot. You finally fell in love with a quarterback in Michael Penix. And like he said, you want to go in the foxhole with this guy. I mean, they dug deep, right? Like we all saw this stationary quarterback at University of Washington. He's going back to the high school film when he's quote unquote Tech 9. And I mean, those highlights I'm sure you've watched them too, Aaron. They're electric to watch. This guy can move more than what we saw off of the 2 ACL injuries. So they did the work, they fell in love, and then they let the Cousins thing play out. Look, he's the first to admit they wanted Cousins to start 1-2 seasons minimum. He broke down sooner than they expected, but there's also a ton of faith in Michael Penix to take a gigantic leap this season.
Yeah, we talk about process versus results, right? That's a big thing, right? And the Falcons haven't quite got the results that they wanted, which, manifests itself in winning. And I think one of the interesting things that you're writing about talking with Terry Fontenot is sort of how he outlines his process and putting a lot of emphasis on the makeup. And I don't think Terry Fontenot or the Falcons are unique in that. I've heard that from a number of scouts and GMs over the years that, the scouting process is really figuring out, who the person is as opposed to the player is, which is the relatively easy part. And when we hear these GMs and coaches and players, they always focus on process, understandably, but you have a situation, across the entire league, with maybe the exception of the Green Bay Packers, where you have a guy at the top of the organization that owns the team that is like, process be damned. All I care about is results. We need to get wins. We need to get butts in the seats, those sorts of things. And so ultimately, 2025 is such an important year because you've had these 4 years of process with Terry Fontenot, and now you got to get these results in year 5. And I'm curious, when you were talking with Terry Fontenot, did you get that sort of sense of urgency from some of the things that he was saying? Did you get that sense that is not only the expectation from outside the building, but also inside the building?
Yes. And I got that sense in Indianapolis, February of 2024. So we chatted at length then for that story that you referenced at the top of the pod. And that was more about Terry as a person, kind of what went into his rise and taking over as the GM in this moment where he knew right then we got to get a quarterback. So you could feel that urgency, right? And that's when he picked up that bag of Skittles and said, hey, if I tell Arthur Blank, my boss, that this bag of Skittles is going to help us win Super Bowl, it doesn't matter if it's $1 million. He's going to say, get as many as you need. And so I think he had that green light to find a quarterback. He did it unconventionally. And now he knows, okay, it's time to win, right? Like all you have to do is pull up Pro Football Reference and see that the last time the Atlanta Falcons had 5 straight losing seasons was 1986 to 1990. So they're on the cusp of that. I mean, it could go either direction. If they have a losing season, if this thing blows up, and I expect the Falcons to win, but hey, say they don't have that D tackle that's a plug versus the run, and you can run on this Raheem Morris defense. And now you know what, that line's really good, but you don't really have a swing tackle. You don't really have depth. Maybe the loss of Drew Dahlman is more significant than you thought, and you suffer there. If it's a lose, that it's a different conversation about Terry Fontenot and this build. But I think that in the NFC, in terms of quarterback play, it's not the AFC. Like there's always a little wiggle room for a team to just launch itself into contention. You saw it out of the Commanders last year. The Commanders didn't really have a good defense for 3 months of the season, right? Like they were kind of just surviving and getting by. I think that Atlanta's offense is going to be explosive. It's going to be big plays. You've got one of the strongest arms in the entire league. Drake London, I mean, I'm sure you've gotten into his statistics in those 3 games. They've got something special. Bijan Robinson's actually being used correctly. You still got Tyler Algier hammering away. Zach Robinson, a great no problems on offense. Defensively, if you can just hold up and you can get some turnovers, this is a team that can get to the NFC Championship game. Hell, they could get to a Super Bowl. And anything can really happen in the NFC, in my opinion. And look, it's not just James Pierce and Jalen Walker. You add a Leonard Floyd, you get Braylon Trice back. In the secondary, the emphasis was ball hawks, guys that are going to turn the ball over. And every GM says that the draft broke perfectly. They were stunned that Jalen Walker was there, stunned that they could get Pierce, stunned that Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman in the later rounds. They really did get everybody they wanted. And I think that, the defense might not be a shutdown top 10 unit, but I think that they do get a 10 sack performer, maybe even another one next year. The first time since 07-08, not even a monumental feat. And I think that they can kind of attack the quarterback in different ways, whether it's Caden Ellis up the gut. You can move Jalen Walker all over the place. James Pierce is a freak. And they've got some deficiencies on that D line, but it's about hitting the quarterback, taking the ball away, and they have a lot of players that can do both.
We've talked a lot about this Falcon team and sort of their potential success heading into this 2025 season. I just kind of want to wrap up here with you, Tyler, and just sort of talk about, how you see not only the Falcon season going, but how you see this NFL season going as we finish today's Locked On Falcons. So, Tyler, as we've discussed all along, you seem to be buying what Terry Fontenot and company are selling. I want to kind of take a bigger picture look at not just the Falcons and how they fit into this upcoming season, but sort of what are some of the other big storylines, teams, compelling things that you'll be following in this 2025 season. We're a couple of months away, but this is the time of year when things go quiet on the NFL calendar, but this is when people start really building the hype because they have nothing else better to do when it comes to the upcoming NFL season. So I'm curious, as you look ahead to this 2025 season, what are some of the things that you're hyped for, whether that's the Falcons or non-Falcons related topics?
I guess start right there with the Falcons. I feel like this is the year they make their move. It's got to be the year they make their move for all the things we've kind of gotten into today. But it's the division. I mean, the Saints are, I guess, finally realizing that they're not going to win the Super Bowl every year with the way they structure contracts. I mean, they're still kind of in cap hell, but they don't scare you. I think Dan Morgan's done a lot of really good things. Bryce Young, too. I don't think Carolina really scares you, even though they did beat Atlanta in the last game of the season, right? And then Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield you're able to beat them twice with Kirk Cousins. They're solid. I don't feel like it's a team that necessarily got a hell of a lot better this offseason or last. I feel like maybe that is kind of their plateau. We'll see. Love Baker as much as the next guy. But I think there's an opportunity in the division to take a huge leap if you're Atlanta, and really the whole NFC. I mean, the NFC North, NFC East, I get it, loaded, but there's always a team that kind of takes everybody by surprise, and specifically a quarterback. And if you really do get to know Michael Penix Jr., just like you just kind of put, it's not just the film. The film's great. Like, you can look at these big time throws down the field, tight windows. This is what everybody missed. Not everybody. A lot of people missed in his draft. Like, those 3 receivers that were drafted in the top 100 from the Huskies, they weren't making Penix. Penix was making them. And I think you started to see that ability in Penix, that he can fit difficult throws into tight windows down the field. That's a rare trait. All that stuff you love, but I think it's a human business. It's a people business, and these aren't just names to plug in a fantasy football lineup or to gamble on an app with. Like, it's what's between the ears, and Penix is just wired the right way. I mean, think about what was going on in his mind when he gets drafted by the Falcons. Like, and they're immediately saying, "You're not playing anytime soon. You're the future." Like, we're following that Packers model. You just saw Jordan Love wait 3 years, and now it's your turn to wait 3 years. I mean, he could have cursed the football gods. He could have just been irate, and maybe he was a little upset, right? We're kind of judging it based off of public interviews, but I mean, everything we see and everything I've heard is he handled that unbelievably well. Like, he at that press conference the next day, it's like, I'm going to do everything I can to be a positive force in the locker room. I watched the quarterback documentary on Netflix with Kirk Cousins. This is somebody I want to be around. I want to learn from. And then the season begins. Week to week to week, he is running that scout team. He's doing everything he can to help Kirk Cousins out. I think they just saw a maturity in Michael Penix that they weren't expecting. And back at the owners' meeting, I actually asked Raheem Morris that, like, was there like a characteristic, a trait that maybe went a little underappreciated with Penix? And they didn't know he had that in him. Just that maturity, that poise to kind of wait his turn. Yeah. And again, put yourself in Penix's shoes. You've seen all these other quarterbacks play, right? I mean, you threw for more yards than anybody in college football the last 2 years. And you're seeing the Drake Mays of the world get out there, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. These other guys are getting their shot, and you have to wait. I think the fact that he handled it the right way. When he got a shot, he looked damn good. And now he's got a full off season with an offense that's returning everybody but the center. He could be that player that busts out in a major way in the NFC. I think that if you're going to put a number on it, I think Atlanta wins 11, 12 games, and they win a playoff game or two.
Well, that's the hope. I would love to be sitting here in January talking about the Atlanta Falcons as a playoff team, because it's been far too long since I've been able to do that on this podcast. But, you know, you talk a little bit about the Falcons' ability to win the division. You know, I think the thing that has separated why the Bucs have consistently won this division the last couple of years over a team like the Falcons, even though the Falcons have found themselves for 3 straight years, basically around week 8 in first place in the NFC South, they struggle finishing the season. And we've seen with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, his best football seems to come down the stretch, and that's led to them finishing season strong and sort of winning the division. And my hope with Michael Penix, now that the Falcons hopefully have a franchise quarterback, that we'll see something similar here. So it's not just, hey, Falcons are in first place in week 8, and then we get to, week 15, the Falcons are no longer in first place again. But, when we talk about Penix and we talk about this young quarterback, class coming from this 2024 class, where we saw a lot of promising signs from this group. And you compare that to that 2021 draft class, where right now you kind of just look at Trevor Lawrence as the most and the only really successful one from that draft class. And even he has been very up and down. And that was considered to be kind of a historic draft class at the time. It didn't quite turn out to be that way. And this most recent draft class, you're seeing signs of it. And you talked a little bit earlier about how, you know, in the AFC, you got to have a quarterback. In the NFC, you don't necessarily need one of those guys. But when you look at Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy and Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, do you feel like this is potentially the beginning of maybe a brand new era, where now, instead of talking about the AFC like we have for so many years as the place for great quarterback play, maybe the NFC will be that conference for the years to come?
That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about it that way, because I'm just so stuck in Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Golden Age. Like, just hit simulate to playoff button for all four of those teams, because nothing really matters until January for all the above. That's how it is here in Buffalo, New York. They don't get it, which is crazy. I mean, they didn't make the playoffs for 17 straight years, and now nobody really gives a damn about what happens in September. Like, when do NFC teams get to that place? There's going to be 3 or 4 teams that are having that conversation. You're right. I think the Washington Commanders get to that point with Jaden Daniels. I mean, the Eagles are kind of a different monster, right? Like, they're just, like Tiki Barber put it when we talked last week, a team juggernaut. They can do basically anything that they want. So they're out there in their own world, just kicking the Chiefs' teeth in, right? I don't think the Chiefs passed midfield to like the middle of the third quarter or something in that game. So yeah, that's a different conversation. But Jaden Daniels, I think he's right there. Man, I'm always president of the Jordan Love fan club. I was all in on Jordan Love way back when he was a rookie. I thought that was a genius move by Green Bay. Probably how I kind of naturally gravitated toward Terry Fontenot's decision to draft a quarterback when the world declares you don't need one. That's the best time to draft one. So I think Love, I know it was a little rocky last year. He was hurt a little bit more than people thought. Love could get to that place. Jaden Daniels could get to that place. And yeah, I think Michael Penix gets to that place. Why not? He can move a hell of a lot better than most thought. You even saw it at times, those 3 games last year, another year removed from those back-to-back ACLs. I don't see why he can't, by force of will, get to that conversation where you're expecting to get to the playoffs year in and year out. It all starts at quarterback, right? If Terry Fontenot said it himself, if you don't have a quarterback, nothing else matters. He lived it. They tried to talk themselves into Desmond Ridder. He's not even on a 90-man roster. I think he was like trying out for the Colts last week. So that's how bad it was. You have the quarterback. You can do a lot of things. I mean, you like the Bill. I sat down with Brandon Beane, and like, they could try to build this offensive juggernaut around Josh Allen, but they don't really have to, because Allen can just throw everybody on his back and still score 30 points a game. So they use all their draft capital on defense. They're trying to beef up there, beat Mahomes once and for all in the playoffs. So if you've got the quarterback as a GM, you can really start tinkering and getting creative around that position. It's been this like kind of wonky, topsy-turvy, meandering road, but maybe the Falcons finally got there.
Well, Tyler, you've been very generous with your time talking Falcons, talking NFL, talking draft. I don't want to take up any more of your time, and let the people know where they can find your stuff if they want to get more insights into those subjects and others, about this upcoming NFL season.
Oh, man, this was a pleasure, Aaron. Thanks so much for getting right back to me, and I hope we can do it again. This was awesome, talking Falcons and draft and anonymous sourcing, all the above, man, at any time. golongtd.com is the URL. If you have Substack, that's a great place to read us too. Just right in that Substack app. And also when you subscribe, you get it all delivered right to your email inbox. It's just $8 a month, $50 for the year. All of these team deep dives, player profiles. I'm always just traveling all over the country, trying to sit down with these people in person to hopefully bring you something that's a little different than everything out there. And the Falcon fans have been great. So thanks so much for finding Go Long.
Yes. And so for those of you out there that, missed your long form NFL content, because we get such bite-sized information nowadays, including 30-minute podcasts on a daily basis. Tyler is got the hookup for you on that. So go check his stuff, and I'm sure you got many great features coming all summer long and into the season. So Tyler, again, I really appreciate you joining me on today's Locked On Falcons, and I look forward to any future conversations, hopefully, where all of these bright visions of the future for the Falcons do actually come to fruition.
No doubt. And I'll have a story on one of the players that we mentioned earlier in this pod as well. So we'll have some more Falcons coverage coming. Thanks so much for having me.
So I would like to thank Tyler Dunne for joining me today. Again, check out that piece. I'll link to it in the description below. A reminder, this is part one of a two-part conversation we did. In that second part, get deeper into the Jalen Walker and James Pierce selections and take a deeper look into the controversy surrounding the anonymous scout quotes that Tyler and his colleague Bob McGinn get into over at Go Long TD, and that potentially affected the draft stock of a player like James Pierce as well as others, and whether that's a necessary part of this pre-draft process. So that is all potentially in store for you Sunday night here on YouTube. Monday morning, if you're checking us out on your audio feeds. And of course, you can, get that episode when it drops by subscribing or following for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And for your second listen today, make sure you check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show, where as we get closer to training camps, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino are going to make you the most informed NFL fan this all season. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.